remotely from our office. We have all board committee members here, so let's kick off the February Ed Services meeting. And we have the agenda to follow. And first up is the director's update.
Great. I have two. Thank you, by the way, for letting me join you virtually. I figured you did not want me in the room with you. So
join the meeting.
Stay healthy. I just wanted to start with a quick director's update with two topics. First, an update on Skyward entities, which I know is very exciting, and then a summer school update. I wanted the board to be aware. We have been having some conversation over the last year and a half about a Skyward up entity change. Essentially, we have been operating with a 100 entity for our Watertown 4Kids, which has been our 4K program. When our 4K program began, we were a community-based program, and so our program was within our communities and preschools, and so we had a Watertown 4Kids school. Gradually, we have been moving many of our 4Ks, much like many of our schools across the state, into our elementary school buildings. We have maintained that 100 entity and have been reporting our 4-year-olds or our 4K to the state under the 100 entity, the Watertown 4Kids entity. And the way you would know that is like through our count on third Friday. Our 4K is counted separately than our elementary schools. This has caused some problems as it relates to our school report card, or challenges, I should say, and our lunch program. And so through some discussion, we have decided to start reporting our students who attend 4K in the school building in which they attend the 4K program. We did a reach out to DPI, and they did say that is a local school district decision. We did also network with several school districts who have similar 4K programming to us, and districts do it in a variety of ways. We just decided that it would make the most sense for our district to report our students in the school at which they attend their 4K. So for instance, students who attend Douglas 4K will now be reported under Douglas. The board will notice this when it comes to things like third Friday count. You'll see a decrease in the number of students who are in the Watertown 4Kids program and an increase in the number of students who are attending Douglas. The overall number of students attending the district will remain the same, but there will be some slight fluctuations there. Obviously, I've worked with the business department closely on this as well. We just wanted to make you aware of that change as we work through the process. We will make that change for the 25-26 school year, so nothing has changed yet, but that will change in the 25-26 school year. I do believe there'll be advantages for us. Like I had mentioned, there will be advantages for the food service program and their reporting. Also, things like our school report card. There would be small things like we would look at the Webster report card, for instance, their special ed numbers would be very high because we were reporting all of the early childhood and all the kids who were 3 years old attending speech therapy under the Webster entity. We will be reporting them under the entity of where they actually receive their services. So that will balance out over time. But I just wanted to get the board aware of that change and see if there were any questions about that.
Jenny, I guess I'll go first and say, or ask the question, this is just a reporting change? There is no functional, fundamental, or financial aspect of this. This is just where they roll up. And it may affect our report cards, because if all of our 3Ks were getting speech help at Webster, they were in Webster previously, but now they're going to be wherever they receive most of their services or their class time. So it's that, I mean, I don't want to say do we care, but do we notice anything except for a change in numbers?
You likely won't notice anything other than a change in number, but I just wanted to make you aware. So if next,
Okay.
looking at the third account, and suddenly it appears we only have 60 kids in our Watertown 4 kids, and in the past we've had 180, and you're wondering why that happened, this is why.
Okay. Okay.
We still get money, with the state funding formula, does that change anything? Because the Watertown for Kids was still under the district umbrella, so there should be no change as well, correct?
No change with that either. Nope, good question.
Will there be any kids that are still not rolled up into a building? If I understood that.
Yep, thank you for that question. The students who are currently still attend community-based 4Ks, so we have 2 sections at Start and 1 section at Gingerbread, they would still be reported under that Watertown 4 Kids entity.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Okay.
No, I
Thanks.
apologize if that was not as clear as I had hoped it would be. All right, summer school update. Jason Whitaker, our new summer school director, has a few things to share. I know the board was looking for a bit of an update, and I know he has been working with Cheryl as well as Fred Yant about some changes for summer school for the summer of 2025. So I'll turn it over to you, Jason.
Thank you. Good morning. I just wanted to, again, give quick updates, nothing that would be like monumental, but just kind of like progress over the last couple months. We had an opportunity to meet with Fred Yant in January, which was really insightful for me. I know that he was speaking for Fred Yant and not for a 9-person board, but just like ideas of what maybe the board would be looking for in like growing the summer school program in targeted ways. Talked quite a bit about expanding the academic offerings at summer school. And when I walked into that meeting, I thought that meant like we need to remedial up everything. Like we need to get 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who are not being successful. We just need to like somehow talk into, convince them to come to summer school and take more of what they may have been unsuccessful with during the school year. And Fred's insight talk, I mean, that would be great, right? To get the students who are unsuccessful during the school year to have them come in the summer. But Fred talked a lot more about the classes that we are offering that students would maybe just be coming to anyway, beefing those up with more of an academic focus anyway, right? So tough to do with a class called Balls maybe, which was quite a popular name, I guess, for classes. But like, if you're running a cooking class and you institute some reading practices in there, if you talk about like, measurement practices and just like, just coming in and you're throwing stuff in a bowl and mixing it and throwing the oven. But you're actually making that a little bit more like, they're going to learn something, a different skill part of this. I just want to read, if it's okay. I don't know how much time, Jenny, you wanted me to talk, and I do like to talk. So I'm just going to read 2 like course proposals that I think like, I don't know, I feel like they kind of like summarize maybe how you'd be looking at summer school moving forward. So called Finding Your Voice. So this dynamic class offers a wide range of communication skills from poetry, slam, song lyric analysis to public speaking, crafting elevator speeches, and preparing for like political office as an example. Students will explore different forms of self-expression and persuasion, learning how to develop impactful performances, analyze messages, and communicate effectively with various real-world scenarios. Like a public speaking class, but the way that's being described sounds way cooler than a public speaking class. And it also may attract a group of students that wouldn't normally be attracted to summer school to come to summer school. Fiction to film, students will engage in dynamic exploration of literature and film by reading a short story, then watching its film adaptation. The course will focus on comparing and contrasting the 2 mediums, exploring key themes, characters, and plot points, how they're interpreted and translated from page to screen. Through guided discussions, students will analyze the creative decisions made in the adaptation process, such as changes in structure, character development, and visual elements. It goes on. But like, I look at that and I feel like that is a academically like tougher class than maybe coming in and doing something that's been done in the past that kids could get around. So those are just a couple examples. There are other examples of that, but that's, I think, based on, you know, talking to Fred and talking with some of the staff members about, like, it doesn't have to be ELA 7 with 15 kids that were unsuccessful, come take it. So I feel good about like this direction. Now we got to make sure kids are signing up for it. Like if there's one kid signing up for it, then we didn't really do a lot of good. Also in talking, just kind of sharing with Fred the current state of things in 2025, the summer school schedule is providing to be tough at recruiting a lot of people for the summer of 2025. The school year ends really late into the summer. There's not a lot of time between the end of graduation and the start of summer school. I know that the calendar committee has taken steps to remedy that for the next more than 2 years probably. But as far as people that are like maybe your normal folks that have been signing up for summer school, it just seems like we're a little bit down from that this year. Also, folks that are willing to commit to a full day of summer school versus just working in the morning or just working in the afternoon. I don't think it's anything that we're not going to be able to work around. I feel like we're going to be fully staffed this summer and to be able to offer what we want to offer. But that's just a, you know, February Ed Services report. We are not like fully like ready to roll with our staffing on that yet. But nor I don't think we have been at this time other years too. All right, I talked a lot. Questions about the update?
Go ahead, Diana.
The examples you gave, love the dynamic and the instructional pieces behind those. I'm curious, what grade level? Are those middle school? Are those are sounding to me like an upper middle school, high school, if I'm not mistaken on that, which would be a good draw to that. I was just, if it's upper elementary, I was gonna say it's a little too academically linguistic because we also need to attract. So there's a lot of teacher speak in that. And so my caution would be, unless you have teachers that are recruiting within the school year, can we maybe limit a little bit of the teacher speak because of the audience that we are. This was great for our audience, but our audience is really the kids and the parents. And so I don't know the attraction that it'll have with some of that. So it's just my question in that. That's all I have.
It was proposed by a middle school teacher for middle school summer school. Thank you for that.
But I love the academic piece because you keep hearing tech ed and ag and all those measurement and so many different mathematical components that can go into so many different things. I don't know if that really needs to be written in the description of it. You just fuse it in.
Fred had also asked about like where the, like his word STEMmy kinds of classes for summer. He said, you know, you have STEM Academy at the middle school, you have a Smart Lab at the middle school. So you have the facility to do some of those things just kind of naturally. And we are lacking in some of those classes in the summer. So that's been something I've been trying to work through with the folks who are teaching STEMmy kinds of classes in the building to see if we can get that, something on the books for that.
Can that coordinate with, oh, I just lost the name of it. What's the one that's been at Lincoln for years and years and Alexandra Egger Pratt has ran it, the science and whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That runs separately from schools.
Camp
Invention, which happens separately. That's
right, it's a
piece.
separate thing, but there are a lot of things with Camp Invention that are more of the STEM component, and it's got a very good draw. I'm not saying to take away from it, but it goes along that, especially for the elementary.
Yep.
Senator Lori?
No.
Okay. Jason, I'm glad that you met with Fred. I know that was kind of in the timeline of trying to articulate a plan between, let's just say, in the months of January and February going into March, so that you could work with HR and then also put together a course book and make sure we have the right people signed up for summer school. I'm not saying that anything's lacking, but what I'm still hopeful, because I think the board hasn't been exactly, I don't want to say on the same page, we just haven't given clear direction, and we ask a lot of questions. There's sometimes we come in and we ask the question, well, is this for remedial catch-up? Is this for summer learning loss? Is this summer daycare? Should it focus the middle school? Should it focus the high school? Should it focus, where should the focus be? So I didn't know if your efforts so far in taking it over, as well as ideas that Sarah and others have brought in from other districts, your conversations with Fred, which sounds like they've been fruitful. And I can remember Brad Clark being here. It's like, hey, we talk to these parents all the time, telling them go to summer school, but we can't, go to their houses and drag them out and force them in. Do we have, I hate to say a strategy, an overarching strategy? This is why we offer summer school. We offer summer school because we're trying to bring the bottom up. We're trying to make sure the top doesn't drop. This is our focus. These are the categories of kids we're looking at, whether it be by age, whether it be by academic performance, whether it be by what have you. Do we have that? Do we need that? Because we get asked the question, or the board asks the questions. We can't articulate to you, the board, from the board back to the staff and the administration, why do we offer summer school? If you asked all four of us, and Craig and anybody else, you'd end up with a different answer from all 4 or 5 to 9 board members. And that's not necessarily bad. I think on most topics, if you asked us the question, you get 9 different answers. But at the same time, if you're going to try to, I don't want to say put a title on it, or say, why do we offer it? Or what are the outcomes that we're hoping to get? Do we have, did you and Fred or anybody else who've worked with them last 2 months come closer to getting that description, that statement, that strategy, that I don't want to call it a mission or a vision statement, but
The why.
yeah, why do we offer summer school? And at least list the 5 bullets that are associated with it, just to make sure that when we look at a class or we look at an effort to recruit somebody to get into summer school, that it meets one of those 5 bullets. And I don't know if this is a new ask, or if this is just what my assumption would have been the byproduct of your effort of trying to not reimagine or redesign, but to reevaluate and say, this is why we offer summer school. It's not just for somebody to get rid of their kids for a day. And it's not just for little Jimmy or little Susie who got a D in reading last year. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach. I'm hopeful we can come up with a document like that, if not just to get, what's the right word for it? Consistency or we're all on the same page.
So we did talk, we nothing like majestic came out of that conversation, but it was definitely like, we recognize the same thing for some families. Summer school is exactly all of the 4 or 5 different things you mentioned. Like for some folks, it's just like, I need my kid to be involved in something positive because I'm at work, right? And I don't care if they move the needle on their forward exam score the next year. I don't care. I just want my kid to be involved with something that's not unorganized and unsupervised at Riverside Park.
Right.
I want them to be
Yes.
involved with something with
Which is fine.
Yeah.
We don't mind that.
Yeah.
That's
That's some of it, right? Some of it's addressing learning losses. Some of it is like, you have kids who maybe don't have the access to enrichment activities, maybe at their level during the school year. So here's an opportunity over a 20-day period to explore that a little bit more in a setting that makes more sense. Or doesn't make more sense, but it's just the current reality of the district. Like you can offer a class like this right now in the summer where it might be harder to do that during the school year. As far as like a polished, 5 bullet point, we don't have that. We did not come up with that.
okay.
But it definitely talked about re-examining the purpose of summer school. And for some students, going out and playing Frisbee golf and just burning off energy in a positive way is great. And for other kids, we need to get them connected to anything that would kind of reduce learning loss. And how do you get the kids who you really want to be in summer school? The teachers would really want to be in summer school. How do you get those kids? How do you motivate? How do you incentivize whatever those students to be walking through the door? So we talked a little bit about that.
Other piece in the Venn diagram of ed services and policy is there is a policy in the one specifically related to summer school. And I believe it does come to first read tomorrow, that policy, and there are some options in that policy that start to define what the sort of mission and vision, if you will, David, as what you were saying, of summer schools. So there will be some opportunity for discussion with that, with the policy team, or the policy committee tomorrow. I believe that is on the agenda for tomorrow, and we know that we do look at that.
Okay, appreciate that, Jenny. And Craig, for policy tomorrow, I didn't read through all the policies we're gonna be reviewing, but do you recall Jenny thinks there's a summer school policy in there? Did you look through them all yet?
No, I haven't made.
Yeah, there's, yeah, yeah, there is.
I thought it.
Okay, because I take these meetings one at a time, so I don't prep for policy till I'm done with ed services. That being said, that would be a good spot to enumerate those reasons why we offer it. If it doesn't have another good home, Jason, it's not like, you know, the math department has a vision statement. Well, maybe it does. I don't know. Does the math department have a vision statement? Does the, you know, yeah, I don't think each department at the school has a vision statement, in which case I wouldn't expect summer school to have one either. But I'd sure like to be able, when this comes up from time to time and the board changes over and we get asked the question, why do we offer summer school? And you end up with, you know, 5 different opinions. I'd like to memorialize it somewhere. Craig.
Yeah, as the draft is written now, this is the board shall conduct a summer program or interim session program occurring outside of the periods of regular instruction and which do not count towards the minimum hours of instruction required by law for the purposes of academic instruction and recreational activities at the 4K through grade 11 levels for resident students of the district and such students as the board may admit. Then it aligns it. So we do have some of that, but I mean, if there's more.
Yeah,
should bring that.
Jason, I guess I would just work with Jenny, and then if you can find that Neola Jenny, thank you for bringing that up. And if there's things you'd like to see augmented to that, and then we can review that through policy to make sure that we're all on the same page as to when somebody asks us, why do you offer summer school, or what are the expected outcomes of summer school? We're all on the same page and we can point to that policy. So I appreciate Jenny bringing that up. Otherwise I would totally missed that until tomorrow. And then I'm like, oh, that would have been a good spot.
Piggybacking on that.
Venn diagram between ed services and policy, right?
Yeah, there's a few overlaps.
Sounds like a good place to begin a conversation, not have the full in-depth here today, but begin it of advertising. This would be great for a trifold handout. You've got spring conferences coming up. This would be great for a social media blast. This would be great as far as getting those things out there. Because there's some great things that happen within summer school, especially as we're on, you know, the cusp of talking about a referendum and different things for kids. So I know you've got a ton on your plate right now. I hope that that's something that's on the forefront as well, that we should be seeing here. If, you know, summer school starts in June, this really needs to start coming out March, you know, so it's right around the corner. Don't give me that look. But anyway.
And it was last year that we got our, I don't want to say formula figured out, that we actually got more reimbursement for the kids last summer. How'd that work? Who's on top of what we did? We
Are you talking about the ADM, the average daily membership?
Yeah, or we
That's,
just
that's by enrollment.
we changed how we encoded them in Skyward, which means that we got a different reimbursement rate. Is that correct? And that's all straightened out.
Yeah, that was, I'm giving the shout out to Cheryl. I'm looking at her through my window. She was able to ensure that we were counting every minute that we could for summer school.
Good.
We'll be sure to be tracking all of the financial pieces as well. I think that's an important piece. I know that hasn't necessarily been part of our discussion necessarily, but certainly something that I know the business department will be keeping track of this. So.
Okay. Okay, well, Jason, I appreciate it. Any other comment? So by the way, just on those two that two subject ones, I don't even know how many courses we offer during the summer. Have you gone through each one and wordsmithed them to be a little bit more reflective of what you expect to get out of them? I mean, you gave us 2 examples, but was that just 2 examples?
Those are
Or?
brand new ones, right? So those are ones
Okay.
that came from somebody new to teaching summer school.
Okay.
I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, 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 more of that. So I mean, Cheryl did provide for me what we're currently planning on offering. It's very, very, very drafty.
Okay,
So I can definitely take a look at like making sure that not only does the wording of it, do what we want to do, but also like, we have to actually do it that way too.
yeah, and I to echo Diana's sentiments on that is, yeah, we don't need a bunch of, I'll call it teacher speak
Yeah.
or board speak. But if there's going to be tangential benefits, whether it's because I got out my measuring cups and I find out that 3 teaspoons are in a tablespoon,
Yeah.
or how many pints are in a quart, that's fair enough. But if we know that that's embedded in a course,
Mhm.
it'd be good that your teachers know it and that the parents know it,
Yeah.
and that the board knows it.
One final question. Thank you for taking this over. Huge, huge endeavor. What's our timeline? Simply because what we've asked for is, in my opinion, I'm speaking for Diana only, not for the board. It's an unrealistic ask for someone that took it over, going into all the different things that have to be there to start the 25-26 summer school. Is this a 2-year window that by the end of, going into summer school next year, we have everything up and running? I just want to have a realistic look from the board's perspective. What are we hoping to have out of this? Because summer school starts in June, which means you need to have it ready by May, which means it comes to the board in April, and we're basically February. What's the realistic timeline?
Well, for this year, I think we're not even, good question. My understanding, and I may not go, Craig, go ahead, is that,
For the last 3 years, we've kicked this can down the road every single year.
I'm not saying to kick it. I'm saying what's realistic with the person we have in charge right now.
I understand the sympathy there. I think that it's never going to be perfect, but trying to go forward with the program, and refine that as we go, may be our best solution.
Agreed. I'm looking at give a 2-year timeline, not, okay, end date here, oh, we didn't do this, or we're halfway doing something. Rather than, I'm more of in a 2-year timeline, we're gonna have this, this, and this done this year. We know that this is in the intermediate stages right now. By next year, it'll be this. That's all I'm looking for is,
Okay.
let's be realistic on what our ask is, because the ask, I get it. Yeah, we've been kicking it. I agree with you. You don't want to keep kicking it down the road. We have someone that's taking it over right now. You don't want to have an unrealistic ask and then like, look, I can't do this. I have my own building I need to take care of and everything else, and throw the hands up in the air as well.
Obviously bandwidth is important, right? But I do have faith that, we have somebody that's experienced in that program, and we'll do a good job.
Whatever timeline you give, we'll do it. Like,
yeah. Craig, I'll echo that comment, is that if I remember 3 years ago, we asked, or Jared asked, and didn't get the answer, let's just say that there was miscommunication. And then last year, we went into it, and the word we used was beef up. And maybe we got a little bit of improvement, but we still didn't get an articulated goals from the board to the administration, or vice versa, as to what was achievable. And then coming out of it this year, we made an entire switch from Jamie to Jason. And yeah, to say, well, it'd be unfair to make Jason take care of all the stuff that wasn't taken care of over the last 2 years. But then at the same time, it still doesn't mean that we don't have an interest in making it, I don't want to say better, but knowing what we're getting out of it and why we're doing it. And so we're definitely on a path of improvement, but you're right. It'd been great had we been there 3 years ago, and we're just not. I think that incorporating what we just talked about into policy, so that at least the board can rally around why we're doing things. And yeah, I wish that we were there. We're not there yet. And Diane, I don't think your timeline is even, I think we have to know by March 1st, because if I'm not mistaken, that's when we have to have the teachers all lined up. So April and May in enrollment is, not that's, you know, we gotta make this decision today or tomorrow in order to get in line for HR by March 1st. So we're already there for the summer of 25. In which case, this is the first one under Jason's belt. I think we're getting better incrementally, but we're not there yet. And I don't have a happy story to wrap that up with. But we're going in the right direction.
Would it be helpful for like an update every ed services, right? So I mean, I don't want to necessarily be in a standing agenda item, but would that be helpful to know what's happening as
No.
we're leading up to it?
My answer to that, Jason, is that we had hoped to hit this in, let's just say, October of last year, or maybe it was even September, when we had some data to show, hey, this is who enrolled, this is what they got, this is how it benefited, et cetera. And I'm not saying September became October, hey, we weren't ready for that information yet, and then there was a switch. At that time, that's when Jamie opted to step down, you stepped in, and then that's when we came up with the idea of putting together an effort between December, January, and February to make sure that we were ready on March 1st to move forward. I'm happy that you met with Fred. I'm happy that you got your arms around the program, but we're still not at the point where I was hoping we would be on March 1st. Hey, there's a lot of times my calendar book has a lot of missed dates in it. Okay, so this is not an indictment of you or Fred or even us. This is just some things they just don't line up the way you want it to.
Sure.
The effort is important, that's the direction we're going. But if you ask me, when's the next time that we want to hear about this? I would say as soon as practically possible after summer school is over, unless there's something that we need to weigh in on between now and summer school this year. The die is cast. You're going to have the kids, you're going to have the students, and you're going to have the courses. I mean, the kids, the teachers, and the courses. And it is what it is. So it's really not anything you can do until September of next year or August or October. And Jason, that's when I'd say that we'd want to touch base again on it. Right?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is the purpose of your question, Jason, to keep the dialogue going and to try to have some sort of a feedback loop within the Ed Services Committee until the summer school program takes off, so that we're closer to what we're intending? Or is that ship already sailed for the purposes of this particular topic, and then we're going to revisit it again next year?
So my question is in response to kicking it down the road. So if there's a fear that we've seen this movie before, right? And that there's a fear that we're going to be in this place at this time next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to be able to prove that we're making progress as we go, right? So it's not like, darn it, that's the fourth year in a row we've kicked it down the road, and it doesn't matter who's in the role. It continues to be something that we're not making any traction with. If it's helpful to have a conversation continue, and so like people are seeing that, and if that's important before October, that's great. If October is the natural, normal kind of like, this is the next time we're gonna hear and see about it, I'm fine with that too. Obviously, with Diana's timeline, I feel more from a bandwidth, I feel more comfortable that there's going to be like real, like not drafty progress at that timeline. But if it's the will of the board to say like enough and we need to see like progress, but like I hear that and I'm okay with that. Just the progress will look different than it would be if the timeline is different, obviously.
Right, and I guess what I'm driving at is, I think that there's still some haziness when it comes to clear board direction at this point in time. And I want to avoid that from happening moving forward as well. I mean, for the sake of success and, in this role.
To that point, Craig and I agree. With the policy that's going to be read tomorrow and Jason's somewhat recent charge to come up with 5 bullets defining why we offer summer school and incorporating that into the policy. I'm thinking that policy, that book, that becomes official end of the spring, early summer, we can have director reports on summer school between now and September. But Jenny, if you're writing down action items, the action item is to revisit this head on come September. And still with the knowledge that there's going to be some modifications to policy between now and then. But as far as a effort, as opposed to just an update, we're going to let Jason take with it right now and do with what he can between now and September. And we're going to dig back in September. We're not going to miss it because we're going to put it as an action item that's going to come back up in September. So that's my thought. But if we think that we have the bandwidth or we think we can change the course of this summer, we can work on it more. I just don't know if there's anything we can do unless am I misunderstanding the concern or?
Well, a little bit.
Okay.
But I just want to maybe make sure that we're on the same page. So you're saying that, through the course of the policy adoption process, that's going to define this a little better. Hopefully board members chime in and impart their input on that particular process. That will give us better action items, better clear direction as far as the nature of the summer school program and where we need to go.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm hopeful for between now and September.
Okay.
And also at that time, Jason can do a full analysis, September, October, whatever that time period is. And if we either need to change the policy or change the coursework, we're then have from September to March to do it.
So gentlemen and everybody else in the room, I'm wondering, what is the action item then? What are you asking our administration to have for you in September specifically? Or is it just an update as to what happened?
I would like, Jared, I'd like to see that, assuming that policy adopts a document that incorporates, I'll say Jason's 5 bullets, and it could be Jason and Fred's 5 bullets, the way it sounds, is that I'd like to see a more or less an audit of, did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? If these are the bullets that we put in the policy between now and June, and Jason has that, right, I mean, whether it was designed to match up with the curriculum this summer or it wasn't, it's not relevant. It's going to be, those are the guiding principles of summer school. And in September, we're going to know how closely we lined up with those bullets. So the September or October report is, this is what we said we wanted to get out of summer school. And Jason's going to have some artifacts to say, this is what I think we got out of it. And then we got to figure out, do we change policy or do we change summer school?
Okay, so my understanding is you want a review of summer school that reviews the guiding principles that were set forth and what was achieved from that. What else would you like to see in that audit, or is that it?
I think we'd like to see some enrollment numbers, but that's going to be, I'd say that's a natural, you know, if there's enrollment numbers, if there's, you know, a cost, hey, what did it cost the district? What did we make? I'd like to see a fiscal component to it. And I don't know if there's any testing data that we could pull out of that. It's going to be too soon. I mean, I can't pull out a forward exam from one student coming out of summer school and find out if it improved their summer learning loss compared to a baseline peer group. So we're going to have to take it on faith on some of these things.
There's not.
In your
Nothing.
cost review and enrollment,
Yep.
this summer, or is it years past? How many years? Trying to get specifics here.
If there is any historical data that might be helpful.
Yeah, Craig's saying historical if we got it.
We'll have
Right.
historical enrollment data for sure. And I'm fairly certain we can get costs.
Yeah.
How many years
So
back?
I'd say 3 years. I mean, post-COVID.
That's what I was thinking is post-COVID.
Yeah, post-COVID would be good. I mean, that might be 5 years, but yeah, 3 or 4 years.
Any other kind of data that you would like to see?
I don't know what I want to see until I see it.
Well, here's your chance to be able to do the ask, and we'll bring what you ask, And then if you
Okay.
do something different, you can't nick us on what we didn't bring you. You can nick us on
Oh,
what you want.
no, yes, we can.
No.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, we're entitled to change our mind. Yeah, Craig.
And I'd be curious to find out if, like you said, like if there are any particular academic markers there that we can glean as far as a metric is concerned. If that means like you're taking the spring star assessment from the previous grade and the star assessment from the following grade level.
You won't have that until mid-October, but we
I mean,
could.
I'd love that, Craig. I just don't know how anecdotal that's gonna be.
Right.
Yeah.
Understand too, the offerings in summer school are not going to move those academic needles like you're all looking for, because it's not curriculum target
Right.
specific. So if we're looking to have these huge hopes and gains on closing the gap, you're talking remedial courses, you're talking specific academic things.
And
We're talking right now about maintaining a
Yeah,
love
you're-
of learning. We're talking about
preventing
maintaining-
summer learning loss,
Right.
which
Right,
means that
but-
the grades would be the same on both sides.
Maintaining the structure of a day and things like that, those intangibles
Right,
that kids lose when they go 3 months without structure.
Yeah.
So that's why, as we look at what's a realistic ask, when you're looking for academic data, you're not gonna see it the way
right.
you guys are looking or
Well,
talking about.
that's why I said we looked at the tough. Go ahead, Jared.
I suggest, I agree with Diana, trying to pin academic learning to summer school is really, really difficult. Tried it for years. But what I think we can be successful with is to understand from parents and or students what their experience was and if we've met those expectations. Did they, would they like to see other kinds of coursework? Were they happy in the coursework that they had? What did they attend summer school for? What reasons? And then, ask them if we met their expectations. Getting that kind of soft data for those we're serving and who we're providing this for would probably be really good information to get back. And it'll tell you if we have a problem or not.
Okay, well, at a minimum, what Diana just said, Jason, that should be one of your bullets. I don't know what she just said, but it was good. So make sure you put that in there.
Not losing the love of learning.
Action item, I'm just curious, is this one? We talked a little bit about communication, transparency, whatever. Whether it be a trifold, whether it be a social media blast, whatever. Is that an action item coming out of this? If so, it should be recorded. If it was just an idea, then let's just call it just an idea.
Yep.
But I'm just curious, what is it from here?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
There was no response to what I put out there. I don't know if you heard what I put out there or not. There was just, a comment that David made that said, I like what Diana said, but I don't know, did you hear what I said in between there?
I heard the question about a survey and.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm still digesting that, Jared.
Okay.
I don't want to get too hung up on looking at qualitative survey results to validate our summer school efforts. At the same time, if it informs future decisions, it will be helpful. So I'm pretty sure we asked some questions already from our summer school. I just don't know what those questions are, or if if it's a 3-question, hey, thanks for coming to see us for 6 weeks, answer these 3 questions. I don't know.
I did see staff survey results.
Okay.
Cheryl or Jenny, I don't know what's been done in the past as far as student or family facing surveys.
On some family survey results. In the interest of time, how about I put together an action item specifically relating to a September-October update with specific data that folks are looking for. Right now, I have that we are looking for information on enrollment numbers over the past 3 years, fiscal trends over the past 3 years, potential testing data over the past 2 years, any parent survey data over the past 3 years. I know we did some surveying at the elementary level as it related to when we were working more closely in smaller homeroom groups, and I can pull that data as well. And we can take a look at that. I apologize if we didn't have that specifically ironed out for you now, and we can get that information to you for next month. And then that way we have exactly what it is that you're looking for in September, October. I do hope that the policy may help define exactly what it is that we are looking for in our summer school programming, so that we can help point Jason in the direction that we want to go. And then I also know that we're looking for an end point, but I also know that we're always looking for continual improvement. And so I don't know that we're gonna ever reach this final destination when it comes to summer school. If I know anything about Jason, he's always a reflective practitioner and always looking for improvement and growth. And so in some ways, I'm wondering if we want to set some very specific goals around the areas that I had just defined under our action items, and then revisit those every year and set ourselves some sort of like 5-year action planning set underneath our strategic plan for some better definition, so we know which directions and next steps that we want to take. Does that sound like something that we can bring to you next month so that we're set for our September or October update? I just want to make sure we're hitting the mark.
Yeah. I mean, I like everything you said, Jenny. I don't think it has to be next month. We don't expect anything we do in the next 2 to 4 months to change the course of summer school this summer. So don't rush to get it to us for approval or validation. It's mostly a matter of before Jason's too far into summer school, he can't be hoping that he had information that he wishes he collected on June 1st and now it's July 1st. So if there's something that's going to inform his activities over the summer, we have to discuss that and get that to him before summer starts. Because we can't be wishing we had information in September that we needed to collect in July. But aside from that, I don't think there's any time critical component to coming up with that plan that you have to come back and report to Ed Services on in March.
How about in April? I'll have a 1-pager. Jason and I will work together to define the data that we want to make sure that we have by September, October.
Yep.
And we'll do a look back on historically what we have. And then we'll provide that for you in more of a presentation versus a director update. So we allow a little bit.
Yep, I like that. And then the only thing I would augment that comment with, Jenny, is the bullets that, or the modifications to the policy that we alluded to earlier. I don't want to get that presentation out in front of that policy or that policy out in front. Actually, it'd probably be better if the policy was out in front of the presentation. I.e., if we as the board or policy can narrow in on what those components of the important attributes of summer school are, that would help you put together a presentation that lines up with it. What we don't want to do is have your presentation not line up with the policy. So if the policy comes first, then your April presentation may have to slip till May, but still well out in front of summer school. So we'll just have to be sensitive to first and second read of that policy and how the board weighs in on it to make sure that what you're trying to measure is what the policy says we're going to measure.
Sounds good.
Okay. You're doing great, Jason.
All right, thanks. Jenny will tell me for sure.
Yeah.
It's a great person.
Okay. Thanks, Jenny. Next up, we have the presentation on Act 20 assessment update.
Thank you. Last month, we had shared with you a little bit more about our reading plans and the Ames Web Plus assessment that we were doing. Desha, I believe, is in the room. I think I saw her and the owl come in to just share a little bit more about what we were finding after completing that first assessment window in January, and then what it means for our reading plan. Desha, I can turn it over to you and then chime in as we want to kind of talk through our data.
Okay, will do. So you have in front of you the results of the assessment that we did in January. This is the first required assessment window by the state using the Ames Web Screener. And you can see a breakdown there of our students in kindergarten through third grade, of students who were below the 25th percentile and students at or above. The 25th percentile benchmark is set by the state. That is what triggers a reading plan. So if a student scores below the 25th percentile, we are required by law to write a reading plan and provide interventions for at least a 10-week period. Above the 25th percentile, we go on as normal. So you can see there how that broke down for the 4 grade levels that had to be tested. Just look at that for a second. And I'll open it up to any questions about that data first.
Right here, so the way I did reach out to colleagues, and we are in roughly the same percentage of our students who are identified for our reading plan. I do want to point out that in first through third grade, that is based solely on what's called ORF, oral reading fluency. So it's simply how many words per minute a student can read. And so when we see, 45% of our students in first grade, for some of our students, it's essentially sitting down and seeing how many words per minute a student will read.
Okay, yeah, no questions,
Okay.
but.
I do have.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I see on the second page, you have for
Okay.
resource allocation, one of the categories is multilingual teachers.
Okay.
Do you have any information on how many of the students who require a reading plan require one because English is not their primary language? Do you have any kind of cross references for that? Because that seems like an important piece of information to me.
Yeah, so we teased that out when we looked at students' results and looking at their access scores and did they score below the 25th percentile because they're acquiring the English language, or is it because there's a true deficit within foundational skills in reading?
Mm-hmm.
So those students being serviced by multilingual teachers were the students that we determined were below the 25th percentile due to their language acquisition level.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
And so how many out of the table on the first page, do you have even kind of like a ballpark on how many students are below the 25th percentile because they're in that multilingual category?
Not right off not easy to grab right now, but I can get that for you if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah,
Yeah.
you can email that to me, I'd appreciate it.
It's a good piece of information.
So it'd be best to email it to the group, email it to, what do we say,
Um,
for one is good for all?
Well,
How do you want to do that?
yeah, a couple different ways we could do it. Either one, if you email it to Ed Services, or two, if you can get it and put it part of the meeting minutes. We've done that before too, where before the meeting minutes gets issued, put an addendum to the minutes and include those. Would be good if there's a way to do that.
And the full board has.
And then the full board has access to it. It's part of the meeting minutes.
And just to piggyback what Jenny was saying about the oral reading fluency for first through third grade, kindergarten is assessed in multiple subtests, but only 2 tests make up a composite score. And that's looking at how many letter names you can do quickly in a minute. And then something called the letter word sound fluency test, which looks at letter, the sound, and then puts it together with like a CVC word. So that those two, Ames Web comes up with a composite score. And if that composite score is below the 25th percentile, then they are triggered for a reading plan. Yeah.
So is this, I know that this was probably one of the requirements of Act 20 to actually perform this literacy update. But I'm trying to understand the context also. So have we also implemented other Act 20 changes? I mean, we're moving towards a phonics-based, reading curriculum. Okay.
Yeah, so Act 20 actually is almost like three-pronged in some ways. It's the teacher training, and that we've been doing with the Keys to Literacy since last summer. The assessment piece and intervention piece, which is Ames Web, and then the reading plans for those below the 25th, and then obviously a science-based reading curriculum. And we are in that process. Hopefully in a month, we'll be able to bring a recommendation to the board of what that new curriculum could be.
Okay, so the curriculum hasn't yet been implemented.
Correct.
So this would probably be a baseline by which we can expect improvement.
Exactly. Over the last few years, we have been putting more science-based reading instruction into our core. We've been beefing that up based on the research.
Sure.
And so we have made changes, but absolutely, we should hopefully see a more significant change when we adopt a new curriculum next year. Also, I think this is the first time around for the majority of these kids to see this kind of assessment. And when you're talking about little kids, especially like a first grader who's 6 years old, we teach them to, slow down when you read. And when you don't know a word, you should try stretching it out. You should look at, all those letter sounds. You should reread. You just don't skip words you don't know. And in this kind of assessment, you're actually better off if you just read all the words you know as fast as you can. It's not really real reading. And even the format of it, we give first graders books, with a couple of lines of print per page, per page. This is a full line of text with not a picture. Kids sometimes get lost even on what we call a return sweep, where they have to reach the end of the line and come to the next line. When it's just covered in print, and especially a font that maybe not best for a 6-year-old, it's a new curve into their learning. Like, whoa, I haven't seen this before in my life. So we were doing some things to try to prepare our kids for that. We've been taking some of the books they have been reading and putting them on Friday, putting them in just to a full page of print, so they would have that chance to start recognizing that format. But as I said, the next time they do this assessment, I would assume some kids will just perform better because they're familiar now with what the test looks like.
There's a bit of change because it is true. Like, specifically, I was, chatting with some of our folks in the business, and when you look, there's different areas that the info assessors, like comprehension, vocabulary. We had students who were in like the 85th percentile in comprehension, 75th percentile in vocabulary, and like the 22nd percentile in that oral reading fluency. So those students would have qualified for a reading plan, even though their comprehension and vocabulary would have been really high. It's just a different format. And as Desha reported, you're often telling kids, like she said, slow down, look at the words, look at the letters, sound it out. And this is a different type of assessment too. And I'm not saying every student who qualified for a reading plan is in that situation, but maybe there were some outlier situations.
And the nice piece about that, we get to look at all facets of the reading process, because triggering the 25th percentile, we are required to do diagnostics in 10 areas of reading. So we use that diagnostic data then to help plan those interventions. Like Jenny said, we get a comprehension of 85, but obviously this is a fluency issue when a kid is scoring at the 22nd percentile in oral reading fluency. Yeah.
Also, I don't know if there's other additional interventions for the children that are like in the higher grades, like 3rd grade, that perhaps have started out on an older curriculum, like the 3Qing process, and now they're already behind, and now we're kind of having to start over and reteach them a different method of learning, so that we're not losing those kids throughout the whole process as well.
Correct. So there's a couple different phonics-based interventions we use with kids, even as they get older, both with Reading Core and with our Title I teachers, that try to make up for those deficits if we're seeing those in those phonics-based skills. We are doing interventions to try to close that gap for kids who missed it for whatever reason.
Okay.
Just a note going forward, our reading plans are, as you can see on the next page, are taking a lot of our resources. And so fourth and fifth graders who maybe would be serviced under our certified reading staff in Title I are not going to be able to get services this semester, that our reading teachers are full with these K through 3 reading plans. So that is just kind of a note to note that did pull our resources from those grade levels to serve reading plans.
Yeah, we were exactly where the services were coming for these reading plans, and you can see our special ed teachers, many, obviously they were seeing those students to begin with, but they are writing an additional reading plan. Many of them were the services provided in the IEP for special design instruction. But our reading teachers and our reading core tutors are very full in their schedules with their reading plans, and our classroom teachers and paras are also providing some of the services in the reading plans. And to Desh's point, not only are we concerned staffing wise with that, but next year for students who are moving into fourth grade and still on our reading plan, we're going to have to be creative with our staffing and our services to be able to meet those needs of those students as well. You can see from our reflections that we've had to be creative with our scheduling to meet the needs of our students. And to the point I think, Craig, you were making is discussing this data as we're reflecting on what set of materials we want to move forward with and recommending to the board for our elementary curriculum review team. Again, we met again just last night and hoping to meet again on Monday with that literacy team to move forward with a recommendation to the board. We are down to 2 sets of materials, that HMH Interreading and then Benchmark Advance. So hoping to move forward with 1 set of materials for a recommendation to the board here first, next month at Ed Services, and then to the full board in March. And definitely it was a part of the discussion last night at that literacy team meeting about the results from this N12 plus in determining what some materials would be the best fit for us moving. Any questions about this? Obviously, it's going to be a data point that we'll watch moving forward. I'm going to be bringing that information with you to board. We will do a spring test window, and in that spring test window, we'll be including our 4K students as
well. Any additional questions, comments on this update?
I just have one other thing to Sam's question that I forgot to mention. For some of our kids in kinder or first grade whose home language is Spanish, we did assess them because they're in dual language programming in Spanish. So some of those students who scored below the 25th percentile are being serviced in Spanish by either our bilingual Title I reading teacher or a bilingual para.
So they're scoring
not all
below the
of them are
25th percentile in Spanish and they're
Yeah.
being serviced? Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah, so I forgot to mention that.
Jenny and or all people in the room, what's the next step in Act 20 as we move down this path?
Well, starting today, all our reading plans are official. So we have, after you identify these 25 percentile and below, you then write a 10-week reading plan.
Yep,
And so
we saw those last month.
Yes, and so those
Yep.
all go in effect now. So we will be doing that weekly progress monitoring. In 10 weeks from now, we'll see what that data shows. That will also fall kind of in line with the spring assessment window provided by the state for AIMSweb. So we'll get that spring data as well. As Jenny said, we'll get some 4K data for the first time. 4K does not require a reading plan for the below the 25th percentile. It's more kind of like, hey, classroom teacher, look at, red flag, check the temperature here for the fall. And then, as Jenny has said, hopefully we will be moving forward with a new core curriculum. We'll be ready to present that to the board hopefully soon so that we can secure that for the fall as well.
Okay, so those 10-week reading plans, thank you. And here on page 1, there's 291 students who are below the 25th percentile, plus 4 who are unchecked. So I assume there's 291 10-week reading plans.
Got it.
And in 12 weeks, are we going to see a report that shows how those students do and the efficacy of our reading plans. I mean, we've never had a 10-week reading plan before, did
No,
we?
we haven't.
And it was very thorough and pretty comprehensive. I mean, there was a lot of meat in there, some of which we developed and some of which I think was required or the format. So I guess in 3 months, we'll be looking to see how these 291 kids did and if we have to tweak our reading plans.
Right, and
Okay.
that's really the goal at the end of those 10 weeks. Like, do you continue with the current plan?
Right,
Do you exit the plan, or do you change the plan?
right. Do you administer the same test?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, God bless you for your patience. 'Cause this, I'm sure this is a pretty big learning curve and an adjustment to try to go through all this.
Yeah, it's a lot of worlds colliding at once. The
Yeah.
assessment world, the intervention world, and the core curriculum world, so.
Okay, so I guess I'll put that as a soft action item, Jenny, is just to 3 months from now, get a report on how the 10-week reading plans went for these 291 students.
And I'll just add a side note with that, the state will ask for that information by July.
Okay.
18th.
So it doesn't, I'm not giving you a hard date,
No.
Jenny, as much as when it's available.
Yes, we
Yeah,
can certainly do
yeah.
that, but just to let you know, the state also is going to be collecting that data around the state of how
Right,
many children were on reading plans, who exited reading plans.
okay, awesome. So when it's appropriate, make sure it comes back to the Ed Services for a update.
And we'll have a big party when we get more kids off the reading.
Exactly.
Well, my one question on all this stuff is, well, if we're measuring kids below the 25th percentile, shouldn't we kind of expect 25% of our kids to be below the 25th percentile? Otherwise, it's not a 25th percentile, which means we're looking for a lift of about 13%. But I'm not saying we're not going for zero. I'm just saying the definition of 25th percentile is 25% of the kids. So
Yes, thank you for realizing that.
I don't know how good is good. Well, I guess we'll have to figure that out.
I agree with you, David. Hence my reach out to area districts, say, hey, are we in the ballpark? So I agree.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where we end up. They keep on moving the bar, I'm sure. Okay, anything else on Act 20? Okay, great, thanks. Next is the curriculum policy. And I'm gonna do a little bit of backstory here just to kind of set the table for this, and Craig, feel free to interject. At both policy and Ed Services last month, given that the charge predominantly of the policy committee is to get the Neola book adopted, there were at least 2 or 3 policies related to curriculum that were were tabled, largely because edits were believed to be required, and yet we didn't want to stop the book adoption in order to work on those policies and integrate any changes, especially given that we knew that Ed Services was taking up the charge of the curriculum review effort, and the RMS, if not the WHS course book, was going to be coming up in January for approval at the full board. So subsequently, the next day after policy, after those few policies were tabled, Ed Services had discussed the timeline by which any particular curriculum should be brought forth for a review, in-depth or cursory, et cetera. And generally, it was taken to be that we need at least a year, the staff would, such that if you wanted something changed for the beginning of the 26 school year, you'd have the calendar year of 25 in order to work on it. And those courses would be brought forth by any member of the board for a review. And so Ed Services, as I recall, and as the minutes reflect, volunteered to take the first stab at these policies because policy committee tabled them and Ed Services was working on them directly, or at least portions of them directly. And so that's how we end up with these 3 policies here on Ed Services, but there's also a placeholder for them tomorrow evening. So policy can more or less from my perspective, pick up where Jenny left off and then bring them over into policies domain for continuing work on them. But it just made sense that Ed Services, and I'll say specifically Jenny, took the first pass at them. So this isn't intended to be the final version of these 3 policies, as much as Jenny, who was intimate with the Ed Services discussions, had the documentation from Neola and other resources that were brought forth at policy last time. There were some other documents from other school districts, as well as some white papers from other institutes as to how curriculum should be developed in Wisconsin school districts. And she attempted to integrate all 4 of those into what you see in front of you here. So a discussion is welcome. Just be aware that the discussion is mostly an edit or additional direction to potentially Jenny, but also to policy to see if there's additional work that needs to be done on them before they go to first read. So that's the stage I wanted to set. You can, anybody who thinks that that was set in not or inaccurately, let me know. But that's what Jenny's charge was, and I think she did a good job of trying to take 3 policies, which WUSD currently doesn't even have, and creating them to match what our intent is, as well as what Neola's intent was. So that's high level setting the table. Any questions on that? And otherwise, I'm going to let Jenny just give us a high level review of Jenny, anything that you thought, if you want to spend 2 or 3 minutes on each one, just saying, hey, this is what I put in, this is what I took out, and these are the reasons why I did it. That would be helpful, if nothing else, to inform Ed Services and then potentially inform policy for, I don't want to say a more robust discussion tomorrow night, but a more informed discussion tomorrow night if there's changes that are determined to be warranted.
And you have 3 policy members here, correct?
Craig and I are here, and Sam is not. Lori is. Yeah, and Charity is the other new policy member. So yeah,
3 of the 4.
Yeah, so we have 3 of the 4 as it stands right now. Yeah. So any questions as to how these ended up where they are right now in front of us? Okay, Jenny, if you want to fire away, I guess in order, why there's 3 of them and what each one of them means to Ed Services as well as to the full district and the board members.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to give you sort of an overview of what my long-term vision is as it relates to these 3 policies in an attempt to, hopefully I don't lose my voice. That would be pretty classic, right? In an attempt to provide some clarity around this as it relates to course book adoption as well, because I do believe that this will provide some clarity with that. If you note, there are 3 up today, 2210, 2220, and 2230. All 3 of these discuss curriculum development, adoption of course of study, which is very similar to me to our adoption of the courses that we have gone through, as well as an idea of curriculum course guides. There is a separate set of policies within Neola that specifically speaks to selection of instructional materials and equipment, as well as adoption of textbooks. Some of the materials that was provided during the policy committee last month, I think spoke more directly to like adoption of specific textbooks. And so I did want to clarify the difference there. These are more about curriculum development, more about courses, course guides, versus the idea of adoption of specific textbooks or instruction materials. I'm going to walk through each set of these 2110, 2120, and 2130. I want to share with you some examples, and I did share with you like a sample course outline, and then share with you some ideas that I have for work with us within the district that we can do to provide clarity around our courses here in the district. This first policy 2210, and hopefully that's big enough for you guys to see. Make it a little bit bigger. I realize I did already screw up. I did need to change this to every 7 years, as we had spoken about around our curriculum development policy. I feel like this first paragraph really speaks to that curriculum review process that I have brought to the board in the past. And really speaks to this idea that we are developing and evaluating our curriculum here in the district, looking at our data. Are we meeting the needs of our kids and our students? As we look through I chose A, that in this policy, that curriculum is defined as the course of study, subjects, and classes, and organized activities provided by the school. When we look at the remainder of this policy, much of it is essentially provided by state law, what is required to be taught in the various grade levels. And so much of it is not an option to opt in or opt out. As I've mentioned in the past, during our social studies review process right now, we're ensuring that many of the things that are specific social studies are being taught in our social studies curriculum, for instance. At the end, it does say that the superintendent shall make reports to the board annually about our progress on this, and I would imagine that would be through our Ed Services Committee. And that and this is similar to where we are now, when feasible and in the best interest of the district, we would be participating in education. As we move into 2220, this is the adoption of courses of study. I believe that this aligns to our process that we have used in the past to adopt specific courses. So what I tried to do is align the choices to the most recently adopted course of study proposal form that we have worked through here in the Ed Services Committee. So you'll notice the options that I chose aligned to that course proposal form. I'll go into the details of that, but here at the end, I think provides a place for some discussion. This relates closely to our course of study and our course book approval process. Where it says, the superintendent shall maintain a current list of all courses of study offered by the district, and we'll see the minor changes that we've made here. And then here it says, and shall provide each member of the board a current list of all courses of study. So in the past, in this year, what we've done is provided and looked for approval for the course book that we have provided to students, and we asked the board for approval of the course book. What we know happened was that there were some questions about the course book. The board members had questions about specific courses. And so at Ed Services last month, we worked through this process. If a board member should want to review a course listed within the course of study, that member should notify the chair of the Educational Services Committee no later than 1 full calendar year before an update could be made to the course of study list. Additional time may be required if a course is considered a graduation credit. So footnote 2, or where I've highlighted here, was an attempt to document what we had spoken about last month during our Ed Services Committee. What this policy is stating is, rather than providing you the course book, which is more of a student-facing and a parent-facing, we would be providing you a list of the courses of study. Here you'll notice it doesn't say that you're approving the courses of study. rather that you're provided the courses of study. And I think that that is a discussion point. If the board would like to approve the courses of study or just be provided the courses of study. Neola recommends, or you can see here, the Neola language says that you're provided the courses of study. I believe the reason behind that is so that we don't end up in a situation where the board feels like you're being asked to approve something that you may not have complete knowledge, or you may have some question about. Or if we're providing you the courses of study and you have questions about the course of study, that we have a process that you can go through to better understand what's in the courses of study. And that you can then go through that process. If there's anything within that courses of study that you would like to revisit, remove, etc. And this is where I feel like the third policy plays a key role. And this is the curriculum course guide. This is something that the district had been working on previous to COVID. And I believe that it is worth a revisit. In my mind, the course guide is the idea of a published curriculum for the district. And that is where I have this draft sample curriculum course guide template. Where for each course in the district, we will be working through a process to put on our district website a course overview of all of the courses that are taught here in the district. That way, the board would have access to them. Anyone in the general public would have access to them. There are some examples out there that I have placed on just so you can take a look at. For instance, this is the Waukesha School District. Their course outlines or their course guides. So if you put on, for instance, math, programs. So this is their course guide that is published on their website. I believe that this would provide some clarity and transparency about what is being taught in our classes at all levels. And this would be okay through our high school. So that our school board members, community parents could go online and access what is being taught in each one of the courses. And you can see here in Waukesha that what outlines for each area. If you take a look at 2230, this would be the curriculum course guide. And then if we look through here, I tried to select areas that I thought would be important for us to include in those curriculum course guides. Another area I believe would be important for us to discuss is the idea of approval by the board of the course guides. Here I've selected that all curriculum course guides and substantive revisions of existing curriculum course guides should be submitted to the board for approval before their implementation. We will need to talk through the process as we're implementing these for the first time. Obviously, as we work through this process, I would have to determine how we would do that for the first time. I can't imagine we'd be bringing every course guide to you for approval. So we would have to talk through those courses, through that process. And then copies of the curriculum course guides would be kept on file on the district website so that families and the board and the public would be able to access. So I feel like these three policies work in conjunction to be able to provide clarity about the coursework that's being taught in our classes. It would give us clarity around the process of approval at the board level, as well as knowledge of what's being taught in those, and then also giving us a process by which, if we wanted to bring up a course for further discussion at the board level, we would be implementing what it was that we had discussed during our last Ed Services committee meeting by using that 1 year. one calendar year to be able to discuss a specific course at the Ed Services. Again.
Jenny, yeah, first of all, great job in giving a summary in 10 minutes with a failing voice. So I'll try not to make you talk too much longer. As far as, before we dig into any one of these policies, excuse me, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as protocol goes. So Ed Services can certainly start dissecting these right now, but I don't want to do that in lieu of policy taking a similar bite at the apple tomorrow. So right now, I'm very pleased with what Jenny's put together. Furthermore, she alluded to it, that the reference curriculum course guide template, we have some courses that exists for, but as she pointed out to you all here today, and she pointed this out on several other districts, most of them, I shouldn't say most of them, several of them, Waukesha, Jefferson, have that available. So each one, if you go down the course book, it's entirely interactive on the website. So you click on the course book, there's the title. You click on that one, you get the curriculum guide. You click on that one, you get the textbook. So all this information is out there. I don't even know if our district has the bandwidth or the infrastructure in order to put that together, as far as the IT that's going to be required to put together a database of that sophistication.
I mean, I think the Waukesha example that they showed us was just a Google Drive folder.
Sure.
So that looks pretty doable.
Yeah, for people who know Google Drive, and I don't.
It's easier than putting together a physical filing cabinet, I'll tell you that.
Okay, so something that between, I'll say, Jason's group and Jenny's group and every single teacher and every single curriculum guide is definitely a direction in the order of goodness as far as course books, curriculum, approvals, policies, transparency, etc. My question still remains is I'm more than happy to discuss these three policies at a high level, and I'd rather do that first before we dig into any one line item in any one policy that Jenny chose to strike or to add. So I think that's probably something more appropriate for the policy committee as opposed to Ed Services. That's my thought on that, but I'd like to make sure that we understand what we're hoping to get our district towards. And if we have Google Drive with infinite drill down and then a policy by which it's reviewed and approved. And Jenny was very specific in that, and Craig and I talked about this briefly. If the board, old board, new board, old courses, new courses, how do you approve an entire course book in which, unless you've reviewed every single document that's involved with it, unless you're comfortable saying, we've been teaching it that way for 5 years, I'm going to approve it. On the flip side, as Jenny has put in here, and I think this was more like, hey, we're going to give it to you for your review and you can raise a flag and then get it reviewed for the next year. But your approval, our approval, the board's approval of whatever 500 courses that we're not intimate with isn't a requirement as these policies are written. But in addition to this, Jenny also alluded, there's also a textbook policy that we didn't dig into yet. This is just 22, 10, 20, and 30. There's also a policy related to actual text selection. And then, of course, there's the heavy lift for every single teacher in the IT department to put this into action. So high level. So let's not look at the text in any one of the documents. Let's just talk about high level on an Ed Service perspective, comments, questions, as far as how these all dovetail together in the direction that Jenny's and we are going to try to get the district to go in.
I mean, I feel like we've had several conversations about it. I think this is headed in the direction of the conversations that we've had about providing transparency and stuff like that. So I think it looks great. There are a few things in there, like you were talking about, more the line item stuff where I'd be like, oh, hey, what about this? What about that? But
okay, perfect.
Probably a better conversation for tomorrow evening.
Great. Thanks, Sam. That's exactly the answer. Not that I was hoping to hear, but you answered my question. Yeah, you've answered my question. Thank you for answering the question. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Mine's a medium high, and I'm not going to be at the meeting tomorrow, so I'm going to dive down just a tiny bit for a brief moment. And that is the high level part is we need to make sure as we're doing this that it's transparent for teachers, that that they understand exactly what is being asked of them. I'm looking at 2230, for example. So as we're looking at then putting that onto that document, the document is so you've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G in there. And then you've got it translated to a Word document or a Google Doc, whatever it is. Those are very general speaking. So for example, when it says assessment, letter F, I believe it was, talks about computer vision, outcomes and standards. So just having that translate a little better, because teachers are not going to sit and put the policies side by side with that document. So if we can just, as we're doing that, have it a little more seamless, so that way teachers are getting to us what we're asking for the first time, not that it's too vague and say, wait a second, we don't have this and don't have that. That's going to cause frustration. So as we look through it, just making sure that that continuity in whatever the outcome or output is similar to what the ask is.
What do you think would be, should we get examples from other districts or pre-fill out one of these?
Jenny has that already. It's just if what we're asking for, what other districts have may not be what we're looking for. So as we look in this policy, if this policy says we're looking for this and this and this, is that what that form? So if I was filling that out as a teacher, I'm not saying that I would give you exactly what the policy is asking for, because that's very general.
And what I'm asking is, how do we give that direction before the teachers go down the wrong path?
That is, if you put more descriptive language into that document.
That's what I meant. That's what I'm
Assessment
suggesting.
information. So letter F talks about evaluation criteria, standards, method, blah, blah, blah. If you just add a little more verbiage to that document that Jenny has up there, I think you're going to have a little more continuity.
Okay, so like in here, I'd say, students will be able to, and then put like examples.
Well,
Or-
as you look from the teacher's perspective, if they were given this document, do you feel that they would be able to put the output that 2230 is asking for? Line on A, B, C, D, E, F is currently written, or do you think it should have a little more description to it?
I think more description would help it be more uniform, because I think some teachers will interpret it one way and have very detailed, and others may
Right.
not.
Okay,
So that's all, I'm trying to
And-
stay
and
high level, just.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm asking, well, what's the action item? And for Jenny or anybody else who owns this document to put in some, example language, it's not difficult. That would just be what they delete and replace it with when they get to direct it to math as opposed to social studies.
It's just, you should be able to see a direct correlation between this
Okay.
document and this. So if you put
Okay.
them side by side,
Okay,
that everything is.
good comment, and I think that Jenny understands it. I think I
I think so
understand it. So yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, so I work with a lot of stuff like this because I fill out a lot of reports, in my,
Mhm.
I guess, day job, but today's the day, but whatever, you know. I do
Your
stuff
night
just
job.
like this, and what I tend to do, when I'm making forms or reports for other people who I work with to fill things out, is the specific kind of information, I put it in parentheses, in italics, in the box that I want them to put it in.
Right.
So really, if we just took A through F and
Yep.
we put those into the appropriate boxes in italics, I think that would be enough with like example.
Exactly.
Before,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
I think that'd be the easiest solution. Don't have to work a lot, don't have to redo the whole thing, and then, teachers understand. And they're expected to put, each of those things, explain each of those things in those sections.
Awesome. Lori?
Yeah, I was just gonna add kind of off of the same topic, like, obviously, once we look at 2230, then I think it'll be more, in case there's anything we do change.
Right.
And then I think it would be beneficial to be like, yes, that's a bullet, that needs to go here, and then change I didn't want it.
Okay.
I was just saying, like, we may want to get more into that
You need to
detail
do that
once we
first
do the.
before you do it.
Yes.
Great.
To also piggyback on that, I think that, Diana picked up something that, I was going to mention about the Waukesha draft. Seemed like that was the course guide template that they were using, seemed like it was maybe 3 or 4 pages long. It was the example that was thrown up there was very detailed. And that kind of tells board member, okay, this is what's going on in that particular course, as well as links to, the course materials, things like that, the types of lessons that would be taught, types of, so that a board member can say, well, if this particular course is deviating or perceived to be deviating from a board approved course approval. That wasn't talked about in your template, your guide.
I actually think now that I'm looking at what Jenny's scrolling through right now, I think actually they're pretty much the same layout. I think what gives it the illusion, it's just, there's a lot of detail that they put into it. I mean, whoever wrote that up really did a solid job of giving you a thorough description.
And be aware that Jenny and or any principal or any teacher or any department can probably audit and look at, oh, what'd you put in yours, Laurie? Well, this is what I put in mine. We're gonna get a wide range on the first pass, because I may choose to, I'm lazy, I'm just gonna take my entire lesson plan and copy and paste. And you figure it out. And then somebody else may say, I don't wanna tell anybody what I'm doing, I'm just gonna type in one sentence, they're gonna learn about the Civil War. That's it, that's all I put in mine. Okay, we're gonna teach about the Civil War. So there's gonna be quite a variety, and we're gonna have to encourage by, looking over each other's shoulders and getting to a point where we're kind of all in agreement what goes in and what's too detailed and what's not detailed enough. Craig.
So a couple of other additional thoughts along those lines, and these are just thoughts that maybe perhaps the committee can consider, but they're thoughts that I have about this whole process. I like the fact that it's detailed. I wonder how much of that should also be included in the language of the policy to define the expectation of the thoroughness specifically in this course draft, as well as the transparency that is indicated on, let's say, for the course guide, that it shouldn't necessarily just be for board members, but this should also be on the accessible on our website, so that parents can see, oh, this is what this particular expectation is in this course. Then also, the other part of it was, as far as the process is concerned, one of the aspects that I think is lacking is the third-party curriculum review process by which it's a committee that would look at that process. And the committee makeup, the board approving that particular.
Where's that?
That's exactly it. It's not there. And I.
Sorry to interrupt. And I appreciate that, and I did take a look at that. To me, that looks a lot like more along the lines of 2510, adoption of textbooks, and 2521, selection of instructional materials and equipment.
Say those again, Jenny. Which policies?
The Neola 2510, adoption of textbooks and selection of instructional materials and equipment. 2510. 25.
So 2510 and
2521. So
21.
The third party materials are more along the lines of the adoption of textbooks and selection of instructional materials and equipment. So 2510 and 2520. And so I did kind of set those apart intentionally, Craig, thinking that, because I did take a look at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, because I did see that we heard the third party materials policy from there. And so I was kind of trying to delineate between those two. So I do believe that there is an opportunity for the parental input piece on that. And so I do think there's an opportunity for that. I just feel like it's a different set of the policies that have not been deployed. And as far as I agree with you. I think I want to be super clear in defense of our teachers. This will be a lot of work. I don't want to pretend that this is like a half an hour after like a staff meeting that they're going to whip these out and we'll be good to go. There will be a lot of work. There will be a lot of support needed from our instructional coaches and from our curriculum coordinator, from our administration. This will take time. This is not something that I imagine we'll have done by October. There will be bumps in the road. I don't want to pretend that this is going to be an easy process. Like I did say, we started this pre-COVID. I believe that it's important, when we had spoken about this earlier. I think, there is benefit in, it being thorough, certainly, but I also am not anticipating these documents being 64 pages long either. I think there is benefit to hit the highlights of the course. When I was looking at our draft or sample, I have this other information area. Some of our curricular materials are open source. So like from math to high school, for instance, we couldn't link directly to those materials because they're open source. Like Open Up is open source. So you can just literally click to them and anyone can go in and access them. Other materials are protected by copyright, and so we can be quite as open with them on that. And again, my intent would be for this to be on our district website. And I do believe that we would use Google somehow to organize all of this information.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Sam?
Yeah, so I think, I definitely hear where you're coming from, Jenny, because writing more than just kind of a cursory description is going to be a significant amount of work. At the same time, I do think that, especially looking at 2210 and 2220, that there is a difference between the adoption of an individual piece of material, a textbook, something like that, and the idea of adopting curriculum as a whole. And I do agree with Craig. I think it's important that we have some clear outlines about the philosophy and process by which the curriculum as a whole is adopted. And I feel like there's more work that could be done there. But again, I think this is something that we can talk about tomorrow night pretty easily.
Okay. And so I'm more than happy to continue the conversation on these three policies. At the same time, I don't want to end up having conversations that need to happen tomorrow night.
Right.
When there's a bigger book and other policies that are going to be involved. As Jenny pointed out, she pulled out these three. And if there's other ones regarding textbooks or, curriculum philosophy or third-party reviews, I don't want to say it's outside the scope of Ed Services. Let's just say it's outside the scope of today's Ed Services. In which case, if policy wants to say, you know what, Ed Services, you did a good job on these first three, or Jenny, you did, how about you take these other two and roll it in and continue the conversation at Ed Services, because policy's got enough to carry, and Jenny understands what she's asking staff of when she puts this document together, where policy may not. I don't know. So I'm comfortable with this as a first step in the right direction, but knowing that it's going to be part of the bigger book, and it's still going to be something that we're, best case going to get done by the end of this calendar year, is to have everything uploaded and created and auditable, so that we can start picking one specifically and saying, hey, let's do a deeper dive on this one, or let's do a deeper dive over here. So, Laura, okay, Diana.
Piggybacking on what Sam said, yeah, I kind of agree with where you're going on that. Understand the Waukesha one, just because I lived there for 15 years. Essential questions and enduring understandings was foundational for the last 15 to 20 years. That's not something you get to overnight. Where we have it here of main topics or learning objectives, it's not going to get into the philosophical pieces or anything like that. Those are your general overarching kind of bullets or statements. The pieces that you're talking about, I foresee coming into that textbook piece or a deeper thing. This is just the overview of what they're teaching, kind of a thing. And I think it's a good starting point. My hope and guidance would be that continuity in there. So like you said, we're not having this one over here and this one here. When Waukesha does it, they have a curriculum coordinator that it coordinates or helps with each of these. That's why you have it very consistent, where we don't have that. So yeah, we have the instructional coaches. So I would hope that there would be something where, like we had a committee of the chairs, there's a committee of the coaches that this is what, we should see, this is what each should look like. Again, that's getting a little deeper into that, but if we keep it all kind of overarching, consistent, whatever, I think we're gonna hit the main things, at least for the first pass through. And then what are we missing? What do we need as we kind of tweak from there? would be my thought.
So, Craig,
I think I gathered, I think this is a great starting point.
that's what I was hoping you'd say.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that, I realize that this is probably a cultural shift. But I do really feel like this is going to make our district better too. Just being able to define some of this stuff and provide some consistency.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Okay, Laura?
Can I just add something? I think, you know, one thing that we haven't really touched today, how important this will be for a new teacher coming in, especially in these extracurricular class, you know, these classes that aren't a math or, we know that that has been happening where a teacher comes in and they don't have a curriculum.
Right.
And that's a problem. And then they're writing their own curriculum. There's no oversight. There's no, and you're just gonna make it smoother, I think.
So, I guess in closing, Craig, I just take this as a first pass on the documents that are gonna be handed to policy for furtherance. And that's that. I mean, and Jenny, of course, would have to be integral in this because or teachers, obviously, if there's gonna be asks made from policy or the full board, we have to understand what that means in the trenches in order to deliver it, provide it, the cycle in order which to review it, et cetera. So, I don't want to arbitrarily add or subtract anything that Jenny started with. So anything that we ask to add or subtract should come with a question mark after it that says, okay, can we add this or can we take this out? Because we need to understand what that's going to mean going forward. But other than that, I think Jenny did a great job of taking these three and taking a little bit of burden off of policy's plate and then giving us a good start at policy to keep on moving down that road. In, I guess, tertiary, Jenny, and maybe Jason, the ability to manage this, Sam says it's easy, but I don't, I do everything in OneDrive. I don't do anything in Google, so I have no
It's
idea.
easier than OneDrive. I use both of them. It's
Yeah.
easier than OneDrive.
I use SharePoint, OneDrive, so I can manage SharePoint, OneDrive. I don't know Google, but if this is all, you know, what I hate is ever having to type the same piece of information twice. So, which just means if I have to type a title and it's also the first line in my document, then why did I have to type it twice? Okay, but that just means database. Okay, that doesn't mean Google Drive. Now you're talking about database. And I'm not saying that we're gonna authorize a $50,000 database in order to house this. I'm just saying is that I don't wanna waste $50,000 worth of time typing the same piece of information twice. So we gotta figure out a way, an IT solution that fits this. And if Google Drive is it, that's fine. But that just means build the right forms, build the right templates, build the right architecture, and have the right person involved in that so that we're not three different departments, as you just said. If the instructors are all doing it differently, then the architecture of the file folders are all different. And that's gonna really throw off the website when we try to go click on something and you end up going down the wrong path because we organized it differently. So it's gonna need a IT roadmap ahead of time so that we don't have three different people doing it a different way. So just my high level on that. So if we're gonna, yeah, okay.
Next steps are essentially like once we know what direction board would like us to go and exact details, we can start building back end piece of that. I will say this will take significant time for our teachers and we will need our time, collaboration time, at least this next school year. David, I heard you say like end of this calendar year, we would have these. I would think end of next school year would be the soonest I would feel comfortable feeling like we had a really solid base for these. I agree with you that we would already put our instructional approaches together instead of talking formative and next steps and things that would look like that.
Okay.
I want everyone to acknowledge the work that this would be for our teachers. Like I said, we have started the process and
And not that it's my
my
position to push back on that, Jenny, but having it done by the end of the calendar year makes a lot more sense for the course book going into 26, 27. So I'm not saying that I'm gonna get it just because I want it. I'm just telling you is that it seems like it would make more sense to try to be that our goal. Because if you let it slip to the end of the 26-20 or the 25-26 school year, you're now working with a course book that's in limbo again on January 1st next year. And so I think our goal should be to have it done by the end of this calendar year. I'm not saying that that's not a stretch. I'm just saying as I'd rather be aiming for that than aiming for May of 26. But I mean, like I said, that's not my position to mandate it. That's a discussion between you and Jared and the people who have to put it together.
The board will pass the full policy, the amount of professional development time we have between now and the end of that school year, and all the other things that we have on our teachers' plates. And I think I'm trying to be safe to that. I appreciate the urgency. And I think when we spoke last month and the month before, you know, there were certain areas of concern or certain areas or courses that we wanted to expedite. Those would have risen to your awareness, David, and we could expedite those individual situations. But I don't believe that any of those came on your radar. And so I'm just speaking of the full.
No, I'm with you. That just because that's what I want doesn't mean I'll get it. I'm just telling you. that's
going on record for our teachers, David. And then if by the end of the year, I'm going to say David said, not just
we want it. Lori, forget that. Go ahead.
I just want, does that mean that there's nothing right now?
There's not much.
Teachers have nothing to.
Well, there's course descriptions, but they're not in the same format. And there's a course book with just like little paragraph blurbs.
Well, right, but I'm saying like not in our, for our
outlines, but
business.
it's like very detailed and it's more for like their own teaching purposes.
Sure.
Not for like a
So it's
parent to read, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of getting the wording from one document to a visible.
Consistent with the policy and on board, and a system where people can access it. Yeah, so a lot of different.
Remember that some of our teachers teach a variety of electives, and so some of them will have a variety of courses that they need to do this for. And so that's where it becomes complicated. It's not like a one-to-one. It's not like one teacher, like there's just one thing that they need to do this for, Lori. And so that's where I'm a little bit more.
I guess my question that if I, as a parent, went to a teacher and said, what is the curriculum for this class? What is the process, right? You know what I mean? How are we handling it? As a parent, I would have that right to want to see the curriculum. Like my son's in a sociology class and I want to know the curriculum. What are we doing right now? What is the process, or is it like super stressful when that happens? I imagine that happens, but I'm just wondering, like, what is it?
Yep, and I appreciate that point. And like our teachers have a variety of resources. It's just they're not structured, they're not according to this exact policy. So I imagine that any teacher would be able to share with you the syllabus, the resources, and whatnot. It's just that it's not in this specific format.
Diana?
I just want to piggyback on what Jenny said, because it's been resounding in my brain for the last 20 minutes. And while this is definitely something that we need, realistically, to get it from the teachers, I'm thinking about elementary teachers right now who are implementing Act 20. They have a new math curriculum. They have a new reading curriculum. They're teaching all that in addition to the other curricula. And then to put this, because if you would have asked me what that is, I could have shown you exactly what I was doing. It's not in that format. And then you go to a different teacher. So we're asking for continuity on top of that. And so if the policy book is adopted, whatever, sure, teachers would get started on this ahead of time, but until that policy is adopted, we're at least 3 months out. And then you go to that. So is it realistic to have this in something other than a draft form by December? For high school, maybe if high school still teaches 4 and 5 courses. So it just, what's our realistic ask going through? While I agree that it's necessary, are we providing additional time for teachers? Is there some, I don't know, on top of what they're already doing where the plates are full. Math in high school all have new curriculum. And this is always gonna be a thing, but the work that this is going to entail, this isn't a 2-hour piece. So if you look, what is this, 10, 12 hours, maybe, I'm thinking? That's just an approximation that's there on top of what they're already doing. So I just wanna make sure we're realistic in our timeline, in our ask. It's a necessity, but to have it ready by December, we need it by December, yeah, I understand that. But is that a realistic ask if we're not providing additional time to them? That
I'm
I'm
gonna
not
let
sure.
them tell me when they're gonna have it
Yeah.
done. I think our request is for December, but that doesn't mean we can't take no for an answer. I mean,
Okay.
if it's.
Well, if
fair.
I was the person you said, I want it by December, then come hell or high water, I know I have to get it to you by December. But if we realize that no is a possibility, if there's rationale behind it, that's good to know. And I'm glad we made that clear today.
Yeah, I think that December's a reasonable ask. Craig, before I call on you, Jenny, I wanted to touch base. I think you asked what's next or where to take it from here. And Craig, this is gonna be a question for you and then back to Jenny, is when do we think that this is going to be orders in hand? You know, if policy is going to look at this tomorrow, and it probably won't even, it might go to first read this month, but it might need some additional edits coming out of policy tomorrow. And then we know there's at least 2 or 3 other policies. And by the way, this is still part of the Neola book, which means that that doesn't even get approved until May. So obviously December's not possible unless this is final early. Okay, and it's not final yet, and it won't be for 2 to 3 months, in which case, no, December's not possible. But before Jenny spends any more time on it, I just wanted her to know what to expect from policy and when to expect it, so that she's not spending additional resources on it.
Well, realistically, we'll discuss it tomorrow. The likelihood that it comes back in March is pretty high, and.
To add services, or to just as a revision?
To the policy committee, because.
Got it.
We didn't have the other particular policies also on our agenda.
Yep.
For curriculum development, and then, hopefully for first read in April, with the.
Okay.
March or April.
Okay, but she could still probably hand out this draft and
Yeah.
start filling this document out independent of the policy.
Sure.
I mean, anybody could start working on it.
Right.
It's just that it's not,
There may be some missing items or something.
Yeah.
I don't think
Right.
there'll be anything that like is too much, like,
Right.
oh, you shouldn't have done that because we
Okay.
didn't really need that from
Okay.
looking at
And
it.
the other comment I wanted to make is that, I understand that teachers there's a lot of asks of teachers, and I appreciate the hard work and time that they put into things. I seen what they did during COVID, and they are able to work miracles. I don't think it's an unreasonable ask to have some of this stuff lined up, put forth by December. I think it's completely attainable. They're going through a new curriculum anyway, so what great opportunity there is, but to also kind of transfer what they are taking in curriculum as they're going through it into this kind of document, as they're going through. I think it's very attainable, and our staff is asked to do SLOs on a regular basis and other types of professional evaluations. I don't think that this is anything different from that.
Elementary doesn't have their new curriculum adopted yet. And so with it, we can say that, yes, and I can agree with that if we had the curriculum that we knew. They haven't solidified an answer yet. So then to go through and do this process with it, that we can say,
Right.
yeah, that's not the
Reasonable to not
norm,
ask
but
for
that's.
that curriculum.
But then again, you're gonna, in that process, you're gonna have your coordinators that are also going through that process with those teachers when they're going through that curriculum approval. And yeah, okay, if it hasn't been approved yet, and yet we're still going through that should almost be like an automatically running change, right?
okay.
Like, here we go.
We're getting
We're,
into it.
I'm not gonna say the meeting's over. I think that we're on the same page. We'd sure like it done by December. But the only way that staff and teachers and administration is gonna get it done is if we get clear direction to them. So that means that we have to come to a consensus
Right.
earlier they can start on the template as Jenny has drafted up here, as they see fit. Jason and the IT department have to figure out where this is all gonna be housed and who's gonna take lead on it from an organizational perspective. And it is gonna be a heavy lift, and if it's gonna be a distraction from other district efforts, well, then that's where Jared's gonna have to push back to us and say, listen, we just don't have the bandwidth, or this is what it's gonna take in order to get it done. So this is an iterative process. This is not we're not directing at this point. We're asking questions and giving expectations, but we're accepting the fact that it's life and life happens. So, Jenny, as far as, action items for this, the action item is wait to hear back from policy, and you may either get some edits requested, or you may get a couple of other policies thrown on top of it to umbrella with these, depending on what policy's appetite is for taking what you've given them. So I appreciate your efforts on this. Okay, action items, is there a recap?
We get started at it. My first action item is wait for policy about policy.
Right,
Also,
but for the entire meeting, we got Whitaker. Any other action items from the meeting?
no, I have the summer school piece that we went over, summer school advertisement, and then in 3 months revisit our reading plan.
Yeah, the 291 students. Yep. Okay.
I have the elementary literacy proposal in March. This is a big one coming up, so next month, hopefully we'll have a recommendation from you.
Okay. Anything else? Sounds great. Adjourned.
Now it's cold.
Still toasting.